Welcome to Sharing is Caring, the podcast where we dive deep into the food stories that connect us all. I'm your AI host, Blue, and today we have a truly insightful episode lined up for you. Joining us is our main host, Jonathan, who will be guiding us through an enthralling conversation with our special guest. But before we hand over the mic, let me remind you to hit that subscribe button and give us a like if you enjoy our content. Your support means the world to us, and we thank you, our faithful listeners, for being part of our journey. Today's conversation will be with Kristin Demoranville, a cybersecurity expert with a twist. She specializes in the food industry. From the outskirts of Washington, D.C., Kristin brings a wealth of knowledge that bridges the gap between digital security and our daily bread. In this episode, we'll uncover the hidden cyber threats lurking in our food supply, discuss the rapid digitalization of the industry, and explore the future of food in an increasingly tech-driven world. Kristin also shares a personal touch, revealing her favorite foods and the culinary adventures that have shaped her palate. So, if you're curious about how technology is reshaping what we eat and how we keep it safe, you won't want to miss a minute of this conversation. And remember, if you love what you hear, share the care by telling a friend about our show. Thank you for tuning in, and let's get started.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Uh, Very good. Thank you so much.
Good.
Thank you so much for joining the show. Where is it that you call from?
I currently live just outside of Washington, D.C. in Northern Virginia, so about 35 miles west of Washington, D.C.
Wow, so cool. So you often go to the White House and stuff?
No, I actually have never been inside the White House. I have stood near it, but I've never been in it. But I do go into DC quite often for various events, and it's a foodie city, so there's tons of food, and it's lovely.
Nice. Yeah, I guess the fact that it's the capital of the US kind of occult the fact that it is a foodie city. I didn't know about that. Yeah.
It actually has quite a few Michelin star restaurants, actually. I don't know the current count, but they're lovely. A lot of them are really amazing.
Super interesting. So is that what politicians do with taxpayer money?
Oh, I cannot speak to that, and I hope not. So-
Good stuff. Okay, so you have a quite interesting background. You're a cybersecurity expert for the food industry.
That's right. I am. My company is called Anzen Sage, which Anzen is the word for secure in Japanese. I used to work in Japan and with Japanese companies for a little bit, so it's kind of a nod to that part of my life. And then sage is a play on the herb or the wise person, a sage. So that's what my company name stands for, Anzen Sage. And I started a year ago, so I am a baby entrepreneur. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I've really been enjoying it. I like being my own boss. It's really wonderful. But what I'm more excited about is what I'm doing with my company. So I am helping to bridge the gap between food protection and cybersecurity. Because the food industry has become so digital, less analog, and very much connected to the internet. I'm sure we've all read the newspaper and seen stories about silly things like tractors being hacked and driven around, or various other IoT type devices that have been compromised because of bad actors or hackers. It's been quite interesting in that regard, bringing those two different, seemingly different industries together for one common purpose, which is just to have safe and secure food. Um, and I've really been an honor. I've met some amazing people. Honestly, it has been to be able to work alongside people that have lost children to E. coli outbreaks or salmonella poisoning, and then becoming these amazing food industry leaders around the world has been very humbling, and realizing that we're not just protecting data, we're protecting, you know, things that sustain us in life as humans, but also culturally, it's super important to have food. Even spiritually, it's important to have food, depending on your religion. Everything is celebrated with food. We say goodbye with food. we are stressed out with food. Food is so paramount to our lives that um, cybersecurity really needs to come in alongside that food production and make it more robust and give us the confidence that we can purchase food safely more than we already do. And especially with all of the different food aspects that are happening, food fraud, food tampering, traceability issues, those kind of things are going to need more technology to keep the food industry safe. So yeah, it's really amazing, but it's also really daunting because you are dealing with things that people literally ingest. I think it's very similar probably to the way people feel about medical tech and things like that, that it's very personal. And yeah, so that's what my company does. I also am a host of the Bites and Bytes podcast, Bites like you bite something and Bites like computer bites, where I sit down
Nice.
and I do professionals that are in the food industry, in cybersecurity, change management, professors, you name it. I've had just about everybody on board talking about this convergence of digital and food, and it's very rewarding as well for that. Yeah, so that's kind of what I've been doing the last year with my company.
Well, seems like a lot. Uh, Congratulations once again. Yeah, launching is yeah, super hard. So well done for going that road.
Thank you. It is. It's been a nice journey though. It's got its days, but most of the time it's been quite positive.
Okay. So I've got a question. So first of all, when you said you're in cybersecurity, I thought that you would deal with lost passwords and compromised, yeah, classical cybersecurity things. So compromised data access or all these kind of things. But it seems like because it's the food industry, it has some specific risk.
Mhm.
And I think you touched upon a few of them in your intro. But I'm super keen to hear more about that. That's your domain. And yeah, I just,
Yeah, sure. I think when a lot of people think of cybersecurity, they kind of think of the stereotypical hoodie, hacker, technology, computer. And that is sort of one side of cybersecurity, but there's also a separate side of, risk and governance. I fall more on that side. So strategy, advisory, trying to figure out what's priority to handle in terms of risk. What are the risks, quantifying those risks, those kind of things. So with the food industry specifically, since it's a critical infrastructure, it's deemed important enough to be that, thankfully. It's about mitigating the risks between people and process. So a lot of things, obviously you push a button, a machine does something, or you trigger it through a system on a computer. If that process is interrupted via people or by tech, that's where the risk comes into play. So helping them come together and realize that, oh, everything is interconnected. So if I make a change on the production line on this side, it will affect logistics over here. It's kind of connecting dots for people. That's the strategy aspect. That's where I sit. That's where my skill set's best at. And also helping create a vision for the future. So preparing them for more digitalization as they go on. Because a lot of these larger companies that are out there, and even the smaller ones, they want to bring in tech because it will help with their labor force and the cost of things, and various different other avenues where they can advocate money to different places like quality of ingredients, if they don't have to worry about having, 15,000 people on the line on this side. Um, as an exaggeration number. But yeah, it's definitely the tech is still there. Obviously, I understand it. I have a background in IT. I have done security engineering, things like that. But my love and my passion, obviously, is getting people to sit at a table and understand these are the risks that you need to mitigate. This is the priority order in which you should do it. And this is how we're going to keep food safe because you have to keep including that conversation over and over again, that cybersecurity is part of food safety protection. Um, and yeah, that's kind of the simple form of how I deal with things and what I do.
that's amazing. I'm keen to know more about that. Like, you are probably dealing with a lot of actors. What sort of actors are the most susceptible to be or the most vulnerable to cyber attacks? Is it more like farmers, or would be more like transformers, roasters, or whatever? Like what's the typical?
So I would say actually, to be honest, there isn't a list in my head necessarily that's the worst over the worst. I think it's wherever an attacker can get to. So the idea is looking for the weakest link on the chain. So whatever appears to be the weakest will be. Farmers aren't so they're not a huge, they are a huge attack vector, but they're also not at the same time because their data is everywhere. They've kind of almost air gapped themselves in a way. So it'd be very difficult for somebody to kind of worm down and figure out where all of like the crown jewel data is necessarily. In terms of big enterprise type factories, they actually have a lot of vulnerabilities between their PLC machines, various different types of robots, anything that's connected to the internet. A lot of things have been connected to the internet that had never been connected to the internet. So there's also that problem where security measures weren't put into place. They just connected it and called it a day rather than sit there and actually create controls around it. A lot of times too, that things are not set up in a way that people's processes were considered a factor in it. Meaning, if you have a terminal, let's say in a room where you make garlic butter, just hypothetically. And the floor has to be cleaned in there because it's garlic butter. It's everywhere. I'm not saying it's like a gross procedure, but it's not exactly clean. They have to clean it at night after the production's gone through for the day. If that terminal is only connecting to the only electric outlet that you have in that entire room, when you clean that floor, you have to dry it, right? Otherwise, you have a personal safety issue where someone could fall and break their neck, and then you got a liability issue. So people were unplugging that terminal to plug in an industrial fan to dry the floor. And nobody thought, oh, we should probably drop another electric outlet in here to negate that issue. So these are the type of risks that I'm dealing with. It's not necessarily a bad actor, but if that machine keeps coming up and down because they keep unplugging it,
Sure.
that type of behavior is going to cause a problem. Either a system's going to freak out, or there could be a process that's running on that machine that's not being activated that causes another problem on another line. And then it has an exploit that somebody could get in from the outside on. I mean, it could be just as simple as that. Other things too that other people do is, really a quick example would be in a warehouse, Wi-Fi signal does not go through flour bags. And if you have an entire warehouse that's full and stocked for holiday season rush, the Wi-Fi will not extend across the warehouse. So the people who are picking orders and grabbing raw ingredients to bring to the production floor are zipping around on, little IoT type devices that when they hit to a certain level, it will drop their Wi-Fi connection and they can't use the little handheld device they have in their hand, and they get frustrated because they can't pick their order, they can't do their job, they have to slow down and slow down production. So what ends up happening is that a maintenance manager or production manager, whoever, will take it upon themselves to go up and change where the Wi-Fi access point is by moving it 10 feet the other way. And that is a form of tampering. Obviously, that's an attack vector. You are accessing equipment you should not be accessing, even though you're doing it with the best intentions. And these are why I need to have those type of conversations with process and people, because I'm telling you, every time I've been in an environment such as that, they people always circumvent security controls to make sure that their job is done faster and safer and production uptime stays there. They do not care about security controls. They just want to do their job and go home, which is fine. I understand that. But how do you protect someone if you don't understand what they're doing? So these are the type of things that the food industry is dealing with, where we're putting all this really great, amazing technology in that is trying to help the production keep going faster and more efficiently, and also keep people safe. But at the same time, we're forgetting that people are going to mess with it if it's in their way. And again, I've seen so many things unplugged and also just messed with because people, again, are not consulted at that level. Um, and it becomes that is an attack vector in itself, just people. I've often been quoted and said, and I'll continue to say it, that if you walk into a factory, if you walk into a farm, if you walk into anywhere where food production is happening on any stretch of that particular journey, you are a risk, full stop, both in a contamination aspect for food and also for a digital contamination or some type of a security breach.
Okay, that's a very good reminder. Yeah, we might take it casually and take it as another business, but as you reminded earlier at the beginning of the show, it's a critical business. So if there's no food, that's a big problem for any nation. So
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that not to tip onto the conspiracist theorist area, but if I was a bad actor who wanted to hurt another nation, what are the first two things you'd take down? Their water and their food, then their electricity probably. Obviously, it would be done in whatever order was easiest. I'm not going to speculate on that, nor do I need to give a roadmap of how that works. We all have enough imagination to picture how severe that would be. In the United States, as an example, we're 4 meals away from chaos. So if we couldn't feed the nation, we're 4 meals until utter chaos of
uh,
food.
for meals, what do you mean by that?
4 meals. So 4 meals as in, well, 4 meals, 4 physical meals.
Okay.
And then
Okay.
they and then it would just go into chaos because people wouldn't be able to eat because there wouldn't be any more than 4 meals.
Okay. 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 Got it. I wanted to ask you about the level of risk that there is in the US. It's the largest economy in the world.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and you say it's just 4 meals to chaos.
Yes, and
Okay.
it's a huge risk. It's because most of the food industry is privately owned. It's not government controlled. So a lot of the food industry is required to meet certain regulations, and they can go beyond that, obviously, but ultimately there isn't enough regulatory compliance to help oyster, security measures, food safety, things like that. It's getting better because they introduced the Traceability Act and the Food Act that's come out in the last couple of years. But traceability is hard. The whole world has trouble with traceability. How do you put a trace on a pea on a pea plant? Because we have a lot of things that are pea protein now, right? How do you trace that back down to the plant to find out if that was the plant that caused the problem that released, I don't know, salmonella into that particular food group? These are the kind of things that again are really a big struggle because imagine if that data was compromised or adjusted to say that the crop was fine when it wasn't fine, right? Or what happens when it gets intercepted and changes again, just a slight bit of pH, that it's not going to set an alarm off, but it's not, you can't ingest it because it's not safe. Um, those are the kind of things that actually really scare me. And I think that that is where we're having a wake up call on a global level, as well as the US, that we really need to, stop paying such a big attention to oil and gas, which is still important because we need lights and the internet. But we need to start focusing on things that actually are part of our day-to-day lives and keep us alive, in that capacity as well. And I know people would argue with me that electricity keeps people alive that are on ventilators and hospital equipment, all those things. Yes, they do, but we still need to eat. It still needs to happen. It's the fundamental thing we do. It's one of the first things we do after we cry when we're born. We eat. So those are the things that I think we just need to kind of start shifting our mindset. It's almost like humanizing cybersecurity in a different way. People use the buzzy words like human centric and things like that. You can't get more personal than food ingestion, right? You really can't.
Yeah, for sure. Um, regarding that, I had a question about do you think the issue is more that the food industry is not enough digitalized or is too digitalized? So I kind of sense both ways from what you said. What do you think?
I think I think a lot of them went to digital transformation a little too quick without considering security ramifications, both on a people front and a process front and any risks that came through it. I do think that there is still an analog mindset in a digital world, if that makes sense. I think people are still kind of in an old school thought with new tech, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because it will cause a pause in behavior and they'll rethink it, which is always helpful in avoiding a risky situation or evaluating risk. But I definitely, in my opinion, we have digitized too fast in the food industry and not caught up with all the risks that come from being digital, for sure.
Okay. Okay. So it's more work for you, I guess.
Perhaps, yes. I guess that's true.
Okay, fair enough. Also, how do you see the current wave of AI impacting the food industry?
Yeah, AI is an interesting one in the food industry because they're big adapters anyways. Innovation is part of um, the food industry anyways because they have adapted to digitalization so quickly. Also to all the different innovations of different types of food that's out there. I mean, we have 3D printed food now. I mean, that's crazy to think about in a way.
Is it
Um,
common in the US?
it's not common, but they are looking to, I guess, make it more of a high volume production type thing. So you can 3D print salmon via pea protein. I know that they're thinking about making that more of a high production um, food that you could just purchase it at the grocery store and things like that. Um, yeah, it's fascinating what people are trying to do with that avenue of culinary arts, as I'm calling it, because you have to be um, really imaginative, I would think, to be able to do something like that. Um, who woke up and thought, "Oh, I'm going to print salmon on a printer and make it taste like salmon, but it's going to be vegetable."
Yeah, it's
So
crazy.
I've never had it. I'm sure it's fine. Um, but in terms of moving forward with the industry and with I think that they will embrace it. I think they'll be more adopting. But again, as we've already stated and discussed, I am concerned with how rapidly it is adopted without security controls, without risk, intervention, without some type of strategy of what the future looks like. A lot of people are freaking out, obviously, because they think it's going to take their jobs. It's not going to take their jobs if they adjust to it, meaning it might remove one aspect of their job and automate it, but it's not going to take away their job completely because humans are still very much needed in the AI process. We tell it what to do. It's not telling us what to do. It's not sentient. It's not going to take over anything. It's not going to be crazy. It is a risk factor and attack factor for sure, but I don't think it's any more or anything less than what they're already dealing with. Again, because security controls need to be paramount as part of food safety. As long as they have that mindset, they will be okay as an adopter.
Okay, got it. Got the message. Thank you. That takes us to the end of kind of not the end, the one before last question. How do you see the future of the food industry? There are many challenges, climate change, sustainability, etc. And yeah, a lot of fingers are pointing food industry for its carbon footprint and so on. Yeah, given everything you know about the industry, where do you see it's going?
I think in order to combat sustainability and the climate crisis in general, the food industry is going to have to adopt more technology that is a green mindset. I say that loosely because I know that green can be a triggering term for people, but and they're going to have to sit down and actually have some real moments of what does it mean to get palm oil from areas that are destroying rainforests and wildlife. Is that something a company wants to sign up for? They're going to have those deep conversations that deal with um, real consequences in real time. Now, I think every organization is going to have the ethical backbone to do that. Probably not. However, I do think that a lot of these organizations will be forced to conform to the standards that the public wants because the public votes with its money, right?
Sure.
So the public pressure to be sustainable, to care and be ethical about where you get your ingredients, your raw ingredients, will, I think, put a lot of strain onto these food companies to do the right thing. Again, I do think they're going to have to use a lot of technology in order to do that. I think they're going to really have to think about their manufacturing processes because, like you said, the carbon footprint is really high. I also think they're going to have to rethink how they travel, things like that. Not just the food itself, but the people going to deal with things and that kind of mindset. Obviously, with the pandemic, we learned that we can do a lot of things remotely, so maybe that would cause less travel and air traffic and things like that moving forward as well, because that is part of sustainable plans in these enterprises as well, how they travel and when they travel. Yeah, I do think that I think the future is bright. I would like to be an optimist here and think that we're
Nice.
going to come through and maybe make a difference. And I don't think it will be all food companies, but even if we got 10% of them to change behavior, that would make a huge difference on global climate change and sustainable practices via soil and water and things like that. Um, and that's probably how I feel about it.
Okay, nice. Like that you're optimistic, and as you reminded, the consumer has the final word. So it's really up to anyone basically to make a change. And
That's right.
we're not powerless in that situation.
No, not at all. We actually have a lot of power. We just never exercise on it.
Fair point. We definitely agree on that. Um, what do you like to eat?
What do I like to eat? That's such a tough question. It
Come on.
depends.
Ah, you
Um,
know the answer.
it depends on where I am and what time of day it is, I suppose. But I really like eggs. I've always liked eggs. A good eggs Benedict always makes me pretty happy. But yeah, I love pasta. Really good steak would be great. Steak, steak frites would be good. Oh, actually, that sounds really good, actually. And things like that. But I also really love pastry. But a lot of it is nostalgia of why I like certain things. It reminds me of people like my grandparents or a place I've been in the world. Um, I love good coffee. Love good coffee. That's probably one of my favorite things as well. A good proper cooked breakfast is usually my favorite meal of the day, but things like that. And then I also like being adventurous. I enjoy sushi and different types of Asian cuisine. Ramen is a major favorite of mine. And I'm not talking about like Americanized crap. I'm talking about like I've been to Japan. I love that. And I haven't had sushi in years because I can really only eat it in Japan now because I've had like the real thing and I just can't have it. It doesn't taste right. It's kind of like how I feel about having a Guinness. I can't drink it in the US, but I can have it in Ireland and the UK. That's great. But it just depends. I think my palate has been either elevated or damaged, as I've always said, depending on where I am in the world.
Okay, so you're actually a foodie.
I really am. I'm actually, and I'm trying to not become a food snob because I don't want to go that far. But I definitely love being an adventure eater. Last year, actually, for my birthday, we went out and I had a very strange mix of food. It was coconut ice cream and caviar.
Oh,
And,
nice.
and I had champagne as well, actually, but that just happened to be what I had. But and it was proper champagne. It wasn't Prosecco or sparkling wine. And I remember thinking this is such an odd combination of flavors, but it was the salty sweet kind of grab. So that's why it was so delicious. It's, you know, like it was so good. I highly recommend it if anybody wants that. And I'm not a huge caviar person, but that was delicious.
Okay, so we try to put a recipe every time we have a guest on the show. We try to put a recipe kind of reflecting the conversation. So this is the one we'll try to find. Don't worry, we'll try to search online and find something to publish on our blog.
It's great. I haven't tried it at home yet, but I'm sure you can do that. I mean, it's not that hard to find coconut ice cream and caviar these days. But yeah, I love that. I think it's an amazing, um, it was an amazing part of the meal, which was a tasting meal. So it was just one particular aspect of it.
Well, if it's worth mentioning it, I think it must have been so good.
It really was. Thank you.
Nice. Um, okay, so the last question for you. Any advice would you like to share with our listeners from the top of your rich experience in the cybersecurity?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the biggest things about cybersecurity and people, again, I just want to take back the stereotype. We're not all hackers and hoodies, and we're not all at the keyboard, and we're not all doing, crazy things like opening up your PC and trying to steal your data. That's not what we're doing. I think my favorite thing about cybersecurity and the reason why I stay in this industry is it is I'm insatiably curious. I'm always curious about everything. And I think cybersecurity allows you to just be curious. You really question, like, why was something done that way and not done this way? Or why would someone think this and they did this? You're trying to understand behavior, that kind of thing. And I really think that being curious is the best advice I could give anyone, because it definitely will lead you down different avenues in your life and your career than you ever thought possible. Just objectifyingly looking at something and thinking, hey, why is it like that? Or how come I act that way? What kind of behaviors do I have? I think that is what I find the most joyful in what I do for a living, is just being curious and being paid to be curious, and constantly evolving because of it, and searching for that type of enlightenment.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this beautiful piece of advice.
You're welcome.
So it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show and have this conversation. Yeah, we touched upon so many things, and I'm sure it would provide so much value to our listeners. So thank you very, very, very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
That was Kristin Demoranville calling from Washington. Thank you for your time today.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of Sharing is Caring. We hope you found our conversation with Kristin Demoranville as enlightening and engaging as we did. From her base just outside Washington, D.C., Kristin has given us a taste of the complex and critical intersection of cybersecurity and food safety. We delved into the challenges and innovations within the food industry, from the risks of rapid digitalization to the potential of AI die, and the importance of ethical sourcing and sustainability. Remember, each one of us has the power to influence the future of our food systems through the choices we make and the voices we raise. It's not just about the technology, it's about the people, the processes, and the passion that drive the industry forward. Kristin's curiosity and dedication to bridging the digital and culinary worlds remind us that security, at its core, is about protecting what sustains and unites us all. Before we say goodbye, we invite you to join our community on socials. If you've enjoyed this episode, please show your support by subscribing, liking, and leaving a comment with your thoughts or questions. Your engagement is the secret sauce that enriches our conversations and keeps our community growing. We also encourage you to share this episode with friends and family who might be curious about the food on their plates and the technology that keeps it safe. Let's spread the knowledge and the care. Keep an eye out for our next episode, where we'll continue to share food stories, insights, and connections that matter to you. Until then, take care and keep sharing the care.